welcome to another edition of the Sports Writers on the Web. I'm Herald-Whig sports editor Donald Bryan, once again with Blake Toppmeyer and Matt Schuckman from the Herald-Whig staff. And guys, another week of high school football almost here. Decent week last week. A couple of intriguing games on the slate. I guess so. First, Blake, we'll start with you and the Quincy High School football team that you cover. Tough one against Allman last week. How do they rebound at Moline?
Yeah, Moline's going to be a true challenge, and they proved that by beating Rock Island last week. But I think the Blue Devils also proved that they can hang in there with good competition as well. Now the question is, what's their psyche going to be like? You know, are they going to be able to recover knowing that they just blew a game against Allman? I think they'll be all right. The key is going to be able to exploit Moline's defense. Moline is very good offensively. They haven't been all that great defensively. There's been several teams that have rolled up some points against them. The Blue Devils, on the other hand, have only been good offensively twice this year. Their two losses, they've really just been kept under wraps. So I think it's going to come down to the fact whether QHS can exploit Moline's defense a little bit, move the football, and get some consistent success in the running game. Not only from Malik Robbins, but they need some of these other guys to start being more consistent as well, because you really saw Allman last week start to key on Robbins. And we're in WB6 play. You know, Robbins has had several games under his belt. They know what he's about from last year. Defenses are going to start keying on him. They're going to have to find some other weapons to support him.
I picked Moline in the Are You Smarter Than Sports Guy contest, which you can find on wig.com. I went with Moline. Chuck, who'd you go with on that one?
I think I went with Quincy High.
Of course you did.
Where do you... I went with Moline as well. If the game was at Flynn, I think it'd favor the Devils because they're so good at home. But on the road, I like Moline.
Yeah, it should be a tough one. Now probably gonna be a closer game than probably what you're going to see Matt Schuckman Friday night at Peoria Stadium. Or do you think it's going to be a dogfight between UND and Peoria Central?
Don't sell Peoria Central short. They blew out Peoria Manual last week, 33-8. Their first 3-game winning streak since 1997. Tim Thornton is starting to do what we expected. He's turning the Peoria Central program around. A lot of athletes, a lot of speed, could cause a lot of problems for Notre Dame. Obviously, Notre Dame has had the edge in this series, but with guys like Eric Baird, who has 8 rushing touchdowns and almost 500 yards for Peoria Central, who went off last week against Manual, don't sell them short. You know, Notre Dame obviously played very well defensively last week, shutting out Peoria Notre Dame for the 5th straight time. But this is a Notre Dame team that is susceptible at times defensively, especially through the passing game. And if Peoria Central finds a way to get to those defensive backs with its speed, it could cause some problems.
Word about the midway point of the season, week 5 in Illinois. Obviously, we'll go over that with a 9-week season. We are at the midpoint for the Missouri season. Any other games out there of note that people should really take note of this week?
Well, I think the game Blake's going to Friday night is the kind of the marquee game of the weekend, and that's Macon versus Clark County.
Right. And Clark County's, I think, impressed a lot of people. They hung in with Centralia, lost by a point. You know, a game that came down to an extra point that Clark County wasn't able to convert. Now they're getting a chance to play the Macon team that everybody, hands down, is accepted as the best team in Northeast Missouri. Class 1, Class 2, doesn't matter. Northeast Missouri, Macon's the best team in the area. I think Clark County might be able to hang with them a little bit. Ultimately, they're going to have to find a way to neutralize Macon's speed. Macon, that's where they separate themselves from the other teams in the Clarence Canyon Conference, is their speed, and I think that's going to be a huge challenge for Clark County to keep up with.
But if I had to pick one surprise team in our area at this point, I think Clark County would be it. Yeah. Because I don't know if people thought that they would be as good as they have been. I thought people thought, okay, when you looked at the broad picture and you looked at their district, you thought, okay, they're going to win their district. I don't think people thought, one, they'd give Centralia a game the way they did, and now we'll see if they can give Macon a game.
Right.
Clark County's better. Clark County's a team that I think if you're Centralia, Macon, whoever could run into them in the postseason, early in the postseason, you're a little leery of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, their other 3 weeks outside of Centralia, I mean, they've played well, and even against Centralia, they played very well. So they're a team that's through 4 weeks have played well.
And if you ask Quentin Hammer, they should have won that game.
Yeah.
Any other games we should even keep a glance on this week? I know there's a Pittsfield Illini West game where the loser of that one's going to be in a really tough spot when it comes to the playoffs.
Well, and I think that's what it comes down to. Illini West is your defending 3A state champion, a team that's been to the playoffs every year. If you count Carthage, Illini West, every year since 1991. 1990 was the last year they didn't make the playoffs. They're sitting 1-3 right now. If they lose, they have to run the table to have any shot at the playoffs. They pretty much need to run the table starting now.
Right. And to put that differently, you mentioned 20 years in a row. Basically, in the lifetimes of all these players, there's never been a year where Carthage hasn't made the playoffs. And even for the non-Carthage players, there's playoff history, from those schools as well. So I think there's a lot of pressure riding on the Chargers, and I think they know that, but I think there's also a little bit of a sense of pride in we want to keep this playoff streak going.
You'll be able to read a little more about the Chargers in Thursday's edition of the Herald-Whig. Quickly on the college scene, Quincy University's off this week after the big win over Concordia. Missouri 69-0 over Western Illinois. They get to go to the number 1 team in the nation this week. What do you think about the Tigers?
Well, it won't be a reverse score of 69-0.
It won't?
No, it won't.
Okay.
But I think the Tigers have a huge mountain to climb. I know they whipped up on Western, but you saw they weren't that successful at Arizona State. Had to rally to have a shot at winning that game going into overtime. They struggled week 1 offensively. Oklahoma was really good. Oklahoma was very good. They're the reason they're number 1. Oklahoma wins that game.
Quickly, Western Illinois goes to the number 2 team in the nation in Northern Iowa. I think they got an even tougher, not an even tougher road, but just as tough a road this week as they did last.
I can see it being a 40-point game.
Wow.
I don't think Western is that good this year. I mean, they've struggled. They struggled to define who their quarterback was. Now they have done that, but they still struggle offensively. If they don't run the ball effectively, they're going to be in a world of hurt.
Well, the good news about that for Western fans who might be watching, he picked Concordia to win last week, so don't take anything he has to say into account. For Blake Toppmeyer, for Matt Schuckman, I'm Don O'Brien. We'll be back again next week. This has been the Sports Writers on the Web.